Hey, Epiphany Tribe. With me today, I have Kerry Damiano, and she is the creator, writer, and host of her own web series about travel, style, and shopping, Miss World Traveler. She has been to 130 countries in all 50 states, which I'm incredibly jealous about because I have not quite gotten all 50 yet. Um, her love for all things glamorous. She has been able to weave into her YouTube episodes, and that stems from her decades long tie to the pageant community, which is really, really awesome. And yeah, she's training young women in fashion, runway, interview, and public speaking. She freelances as a fashion and jewelry designer and has a scripture memorization ministry called The Amazing Word, which is amazing for a lack of a better word. And I would love to kind of start off with that piece of it. Like, where did that come from? How does that work into your ministry overall? And then we'll kind of
Sure.
see where the rest
Well,
goes.
let me start way back in like the fourth grade. When
Okay.
when I was a member of, it was called Jet Cadets at the time. I don't know what they call them now, but it was just one of those little youth group things for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And at my church, they had this little program that you could win a sash and medals on it if you memorized scripture. And even then, I knew I wanted that sash. And so I just went gangbusters, really started memorizing, filled out my sash. It was so heavy I could hardly wear it. The organizers decided I was going too fast, and they asked me to stop for a while. And that took all the wind out of my sails. That was it. I was done. And I didn't come back to memorizing until as an adult. But the interesting thing was, all those verses I had memorized was like they were in the closet on the shelf. And then once
Mm-hmm.
I opened the door back up, they were all there. And so I didn't have to start completely over again.
Yeah.
The new phase was doing it by chapter and book rather than by verse, but still all those verses came back to me. So that was just kind of a cool tie from you know doing it as a youngster to doing it as an adult.
Yeah, I love it. It kind of sounds a little similar to Awana. I don't know yeah, kind of like the same concept because I grew up in Awana.
Yes, yes, I
So,
think
yeah.
very much like that. Any of
Okay.
those young people's thing where they really want to get you into the word and start.
Mhm.
I mean, if you start young, then you develop good habits of
Mhm.
memorizing when it's easier.
Yes, yes. It is a lot more difficult now.
Exactly.
Uh, I've been working on a couple of different passages and I feel like, man, how did I go from, memorizing so much of the Bible as a kid to where I'm trying to do it now and just struggling. And I'm like,
Yes.
why? I don't understand why it's so much more
Yes.
difficult now.
I don't know why that is, but for some reason it is. The nice thing is, you said you're doing a passage.
Mhm.
If you can do a passage, it strings together rather than
Mhm.
a verse here, a verse there, which is actually harder because then you can't remember that, there's no way to tie it all together. But if
True.
you do a passage, you're repeating and repeating and repeating as you add more on. So it's actually easier to do it that way.
That's very true. I have learned or had learned First Corinthians 13 in two different versions, and like I'm not going to repeat them because I will cross them in my brain, and and like
Easy to
that's
do.
the hard part. Yeah, it's like I'll start saying one and then go to the other, and it's like, wait a minute,
Yes.
that's not the right.
They're very easy to do.
Yeah.
I think it's something people don't understand because I've had this happen before. Like I've been quoting, and I'll stop because I just need a second to get onto it, and someone will try and read it to me. That doesn't work.
Yep.
I know where I am on the page. I have to see it on my own page in my own version in my own Bible
Mhm.
in order to be able to kind of get over that little little
Yeah.
blip.
Yeah.
So uh, from going from one to another, if you get off, it's very difficult to get back because you
Mhm.
need to see it in your own, the exact one that you were doing. Because there's
Yes.
something with sight, sound, forming the words in your mouth. They all work together to help you remember it.
Yeah, very true. It is super funny because I'll sometimes say that was a Tiffany paraphrase because when I'm quoting scripture and I'm like, I don't know if that was New King James or if that was NIV or a combination of both. And I'm like, oh, and then you throw in a little bit of ESV in there too, just for kicks, and it's like, well, it's Tiffany paraphrase. Go look it up yourself.
Yeah. I call when I do that, I miss a word. I get a poke. I get a poke
Yeah.
from the spirit that
Hmm.
says either go back and get that or gloss over it. But I know I've missed something.
Yes.
Every once in a while I drop a verse, and I know that I've done it. Most other people don't know. If you just keep going, nobody knows. But I know.
Mhm.
It's you know right in here, right?
Yes, and then I'm over here going like, "Dang it," because then my brain gets stuck on that of like, "Wait, which part did I miss?" Or which part did I like mess up in some way? And then it's like I lose my train of thought because of my brain is now stuck on that. And it's like, "No, just keep going, and you can figure it out later."
Yes,
You can always go back and correct yourself, right?
that's right. That's right.
I mean, unless somebody calls you out right on the spot, then that's a whole other thing.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
But anyway, I just love that that's how like that whole process got started. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing this with younger girls or just yourself?
No, no. This is something that when I'm asked, I do it at either in a guest church or at my church. In fact, just yesterday, because it's today is Monday, yesterday was
Yeah.
Sunday at church, we started the book of Ephesians. And I do have it memorized, though it's been a while, so I need to go back and get it. But since it's going to take 6 weeks to get through it, I went up to one of the pastors and said, at the end, at the 6 week mark, I'll quote the whole book. And so,
Yeah.
okay, so I am just like 100 miles an hour trying to get it back up and get it ready. It's actually a very difficult book to do because it's
Yes.
so heavy doctrine. There's a story. The
Yeah.
stories are easier because you can follow it along in your head. But when it's just doctrine, 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 it's heavy. And Paul is kind of at his most intellectual. So it's a difficult book, but I'm up for the task.
I love that. That's amazing. I'm glad I asked the clarifying question because I was a little confused. I'm like, where are you doing this at? But yeah, that's pretty impressive. I don't know that much of Ephesians. Well, yeah, I don't know the whole book.
You know
Not like
some
that.
good verses, I'm guessing. It has some
Yes.
great, famous verses. So
Yes.
lots of good ones.
Yes. I would probably have to sit down and like actually count how much of it I really know, but it is such a great book to like go through, because I feel like you learn a lot. It is very deep.
Yes,
You
yes.
have so much like history within that too. Um, so anyway, before I get all preachy,
Well,
everybody go
you're
read
good.
Ephesians. um, but yeah, I just think that that's really awesome. So I want to kind of talk about too, like your pageant background, and how that's led into your life as a single, and where you have kind of come from and gotten to this point in your life.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say that pageantry like led me to being
Yes.
single, but I started late, all things
Hmm.
considered in pageantry. Though I know women who start in their 50s, so it's late is a relative term.
Yes.
I started in college, and it was one of those things that I got the call when you feel the spirit saying, "This is the direction I want to take you," and you go and hold everything. I'm not sure I want to do that. I was in college. I was quite serious about my studies, and I was very athletic. And I thought pageantry was for fluffy girls.
Mm.
Say I said that. When sometimes when you don't know anything about something, you have a preconceived idea, and I had that idea. And of course, in those days, this was the early '80s, and all we knew of was Miss America, Miss
Yes.
USA, and Miss Universe, because those were the ones we saw on TV. So I I resisted, and it's are you sure, Lord? Are you sure this is where you're taking me?
Yeah.
And I kept hearing it, kept hearing it. And finally, I said, "Okay, Lord." Send me someone who knows something about it because I just have no idea where to start. And this woman ended up coming onto our campus. She wasn't from our school, to a meeting of Fellowship of Christian Athletes. To this day, I don't know how she got there or where she came from, but she knew something about pageantry and she got me started. So God honored that request to send somebody to me that just helped me figure out where in the world do I start. And so the rest is kind of history. But interestingly, it's I didn't know that it was a lifelong calling. I only competed for a couple of years, but then I started judging and more judging, then coaching, and now more coaching and judging. And so it's been a 45-year journey. But I had no idea at the time when I got the call that it was something, you know, God was going to use throughout my whole life.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I like it's really interesting like when you get those moments of like am I sure I heard you right? You know. I'm
Exactly, exactly.
I'm
Are you
very
sure?
much yeah. Are you sure? I don't think I heard that correctly. Um as I've been in that stage, well, I guess I've had those moments and it's been a progressive thing for me where I think the Lord has been going like, "Hey, we're going to just kind of ease you into this because if I had just thrown you into the deep end, I would have been like, peace out like Jonah, you know?" I'm like, "Nah."
Where's Tarshish when you need it, right? Where
Yeah,
can I run to?
nah, I'm gonna just go over here. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I didn't like battle it out, because there were definite moments where I personally was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Um, but again, like if you had told me back when I was like a young or an older teen, like maybe 20, maybe about 20, that I would still be single at this stage in my life, or that I would be doing what I'm doing, I would have laughed at you, And so, like, I think that that's the irony of that God will give us things in sections sometimes because we can't handle it. We have to go through some other things to get us to that
So
point,
true.
you
It's a
know.
journey.
Hmm.
And an everyday journey of faith. So, you don't start by sending your kids to college when they're 5 years old. You start
True.
with kindergarten and you just go little, little, little until they're ready. And I think God knows that as his children, he doesn't just throw us into the deep end. He
Yes.
gives us the steps along the way so that by the time we get there and then we look back, we go, oh, I see what you were doing, God. I see the journey you were taking me on. I just didn't see it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I can relate to that in so many different ways. I think when we chatted before, I kind of was referencing where I was at, um, you know, within my own journey and all of that. And now I feel like things are even so much more different and it's wild. But at the same time, I can see the different steps that I had to take within the last month or so. Um, to kind of open me up to where he's taking me now. And it's weird when things transition like that sometimes where how do I want to say this? It feels like things are being ripped away even though they're really not.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because that's kind of where I was at. I was very much I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what my life is gonna look like. Um, and now I'm over here going, there's still some questions with that. But, certain things are more settled now. Like
Yes.
I have a new place to live. I
Yes.
am looking for another job. There's these other steps that are happening where when that call happens, it just seemed like so much chaos sometimes. I don't know if that was your experience, but that has definitely been mine because I like to control things and I like to know the plan.
You want a crystal ball, you want to know everything ahead of time and approve the plan. Okay, God, I know you're asking me to do this, but let me just think about it and see if I approve the plan or not.
Yeah, and I'm just
Or
like,
sometimes I think he does this. He moves us a step, And then when we start to go "Ah," and want to take us, you turn back and the bridge is burned behind you. There
Mm.
is no going back. There's only going forward. And I think God does that to keep our eyes on Him.
Yeah.
So we can't do that. "Ah."
Yeah.
You know,
We're just gonna run hightail it the other direction.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. That's probably more of what is happening currently. Oh boy. Anyway,
That happens really at all stages of your life. You
yeah.
know, so you're in it right now, and it'll happen again and
Hmm.
again and again,
Yeah.
because really that is how God keeps us moving forward. And you know, if we're not moving forward, you know, they say if you're not moving forward, you're moving back. I don't know that I believe that so much, but I don't think God ever lets us stand still. You know,
Yeah.
because He wants us walking with Him all of the time. So even though the pace might be a little bit more sedate, you know, like a little rest, sometimes you just need that I'm empty, you know, and you need God to just to refill the tanks. Kind of like a missionary that goes on the mission field and then they come home for a while and they just
Mhm.
refill their tanks. It's not that they're not, you know, being used anymore. It's just
Yeah.
it's a different pace, right, of service. So, you know, this journey that we're on, sometimes you're running, sometimes you're walking. That's okay.
Yeah. Incredibly valid. Great point. I think it's like I don't know how like this has been if this has ever affected your single journey, but like the idea of like with the church well, I guess because we're in a slightly different generation, so I don't know how this like played a role in your journey, but for us in like my age group, it's been very much like you need to be married by this point, otherwise you're on the shelf, right?
which,
And
which seems like such an old fashioned, you know,
right.
that seems like a 1950s mindset, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know, which is crazy because it's like we're not okay, yeah. Anyway, so it's been pretty wild to like kind of grow up in that mentality, right? And so anyway, before I like get all preachy about my journey, um, I think it's really pertinent to like kind of hear your perspective on that. Um, if whatever you want to share with your own
Sure. Well,
journey.
I never set out to be single. I never
Okay.
thought that would be my life. You know,
Yeah.
I looked around and, you know, my parents had a good marriage and stayed together until my dad passed. You know, they were together 55 and a half years. So
Mm,
I had a good example in front of me. So I never set out to stay single. It just never happened for me. But it was also when I think I was gifted with the gift of celibacy, which is people think it has to do with physical, and it doesn't. It has to do with the ability to not suffer unduly by being alone. And so I don't suffer from being alone. I'm very comfortable with that. But God gave that to me as a gift, being as He was going to ask me to walk the journey alone.
yeah.
So, you know, so I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I never set out to do that. You know, I said I don't. I always did, but it wasn't something that was so heavy. You know, because I've run into women who are just, I want it so badly I can't even function, and that was never my story. So I feel very
Hmm.
fortunate, you know,
Yeah.
from that. But also, as I look back now, I'm in my 60s, and I look back, and now God has given me a ministry to encourage other single women because I've had a whole life of being single. You know, you're still in the, I'm in my 30s, I'm single. There's lots of time left for you to get married and have a family.
Hmm.
I'm past the get married and have a family stage.
Hmm.
We're at different places in our journey, but I didn't know that God was going to have a ministry for me of that, but that I had to live a whole life in order to get one.
Yeah. That's very valid. I would love to like kind of hear a little bit more about that because I have some friends who are kind of in that area of questioning whether they're meant to stay single. And and I've always been like, that's never been my desire. And like, even though I've prayed for the Lord to take these desires away, if that is of his will, like he has not. And so I don't think that that's my path. So I feel like I can't speak into that, because like that's not where I feel like the Lord is taking me. It's just taking a little longer than I thought.
Yes.
But
In God's timing, not yours.
yes, exactly. But on that note, like, can you kind of talk a little bit more about like what that process looked like for you? And yeah.
Well, that God gave me peace.
Okay.
It gave me complete peace about
Mhm.
it. And I always knew that if God had someone for me, he would bring him to me. I didn't have to be looking and looking, I could keep my mind on what God was calling me to do. Uh, and if he put someone right there, great. He didn't put someone right there. I
Yeah.
didn't need to be out trying to search because he gave me peace that this was the journey that I was to be on. And it wasn't that he ever completely took away the desire, it was that it didn't burn within me.
Mm,
And I think for some women that it burns within them. And, scripture says God will give you the desires of your heart if it's within his will and you're seeking him first, which sounds like what you're doing, Tiffany, is that you're seeking whatever God has for you and his best for you.
mhm.
And he knows what that is. So if he brings you a husband, then it's his best for you. If he doesn't bring you a husband, it's his best for you.
Yep.
And once you get to that point where you can say that with total peace in your heart, then it frees you to be who God meant you to be and not trying to, be living in that place of discontent.
Oh, that's valid. Discontent is rough.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I've actually heard from a lot of men who have stayed single. I haven't really talked to a lot of women. Only I've had one other woman on the podcast so far. She's amazing. And, but like I said, I've mostly heard from men. And so I was always kind of curious, like what that looked like for a woman. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Well, and I can say this that life is full. Life is full of joy and
Yes.
abundance and beauty and peace. And, just it is full of fruit
Hmm.
if you are not living in the place of discontent.
Yes.
If that's the place you are staying, you're not going to have joy and peace and so on.
Hmm.
So, getting out of that spot and just the trust that God has a perfect, perfect, perfect plan for you. Once you're there, then the joy and the hope, and I mean, all of those things come with that. Um, I say this to women sometimes. For those who really, really want it, you're in a stage, you're in a phase right now,
Mm.
which, like a chapter of a book, ends at some point, right? Before another chapter begins. So utilize whatever chapter you are in to grow closer to the Lord, maybe to become more financially independent, to become the most that you can be. And maybe that's discovering what your passion is, or following a dream, or learning some new skills for God to be able to use you to do something else. So it isn't a time that's sitting doing nothing. It's a time
Hmm.
for growth and progress and moving along the path that God is saying, I got something for you out here, but you need to get there.
Hmm.
So you can't stay still.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, and that's what I've been preaching for a while. you know, like to be actively waiting. Because I feel
Yes,
like that's
I love
not
that.
it's not a thing that's taught. And at least it was not for us, for my generation. It's something that I've had to learn, a legitimate skill. Like, how do I actively wait? And what does that look like? Because we also have these other outer influences, right? Where, the world's like, oh, no man wants a boss babe, or like whatever, you know,
Yeah.
and like all that stuff. And so, or if you're too strong and independent, you're never going to be able to submit. And I'm like, that is such a lie.
Right.
Like I will step off the soapbox here quickly, but it's like so frustrating to me to be like in my generation and to see so many of us amazing women single because of, I mean, obviously it's God's, ultimately it's God's timing, but I feel like there's so much other influence that's happening from all the different outside perspectives, right?
That's the looking over here and looking over
Yeah.
there instead of
Mhm.
keeping your eyes on God's word and God's plan for you.
Mhm.
It's noise. It's just noise out there.
Yeah, it really is. It really is noise, and I wish a lot more of us could just like tune it out,
Tune it out.
you
That's
know, and ignore it. It's so hard to do that. Like, and I think even that in and of itself is a skill, right? To just be
right. It
able
is.
to.
Well, I liked what you said about actively waiting because when you think about it, okay, you have learned how to actively wait through the being single process, but
Mhm.
really that is it's the Christian experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we are actively waiting for Jesus to return,
Amen.
right? So it's every one of us should be actively waiting. Now, maybe waiting for different things, but point is that skill that you have learned is something that will do well for you in life because even if you do meet someone and get married, you're still actively waiting for what God has for you next. Maybe it's a ministry, maybe it's maybe it's a job, maybe it's
Yeah.
the coming of the Lord. So whatever it is, we are all in that phase of this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through.
Mhm. I mean, amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think it's like, I don't know. I just keep coming back to that, that point of actively waiting, and I'm trying to figure out why. So I'm kind of like over here going like, "Hey, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to say?" um,
Well, and I
you
think
know.
if you can get away from the why,
Mm,
just I talk with my pageant girls a lot about this because
yeah.
pageantry is a very interesting thing in that it's not who crosses the finish line first wins. It's very subjective. And so it's very difficult to when you if you worked really hard and you didn't win, there's a well, why not me? Am I a failure? What's wrong with me? They want to answer that question why. And it's
Mm,
so interesting what the mind does. It plays all these things and they come up with all these, it's because you are focusing on the why instead of saying, for us as Christians to say, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. That's it. There is no more why. There's this. This is what you have for me today. I'll be grateful for it. I will rejoice in it. And what you have for me tomorrow, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to be grateful and I'm going to rejoice in it, regardless of what it is, and not worry about the why. God knows why. You don't have to know why.
oh, that's good. That is
Ah,
really good.
did I just give you a Coke, Tiffany?
Uh-huh. Yep. A little bit. A little bit because I mean, like, so I told you, okay. Um, I was just gonna say because, like, I told you before we started recording that I had had surgery, and so like my whole last week was not at all according to plan, and so it was a really rough week. And I mean, I was still doing things, I was still taking time to rest, but like, if I was feeling tired while I was trying to work on something, I would just stop, which is like very out of my norm. you know, but I kept having to remind myself, like, there's a reason that this happened and it's okay. Like, everything's going to work out. You just need to remember to, like, take it slow and heal. And, like, even though you're frustrated because you can't eat like normal, like, we're being reminded that there is a reason for this. And I kept thinking about how, like, I'm in this transition again of like not knowing where my full-time income is coming from, but I feel like I know what the Lord is telling me to do. And, it's just this kind of like heavy feeling because it comes with a lot more responsibility. But like, I'm all for that. I'm saying yes, right? But because of the way I process things, it's like, okay, I really think that. me having to have surgery last week was very much the Lord going, okay, this is when you need to slow down. You were not going to take a vacation. You were going to work this whole vacation, even though you're supposed to be resting. So I'm going to make you rest.
Yes. Yeah.
You
God
know?
does that sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to just make a point about this surgery that you had. You had mentioned that you had no symptoms.
Yeah.
You didn't have any pain, no symptoms. So, but there was an infection growing in you. And if you had not gone through this,
Mm-hmm.
that infection may have worsened, moved to other areas. I mean,
Yeah.
that that is a good thing that there you were
Yeah.
in a place where they could find the problem. So
Yeah.
God knew, right, that you were going to go through this difficult thing, but his hand was there in a way that was blessing you and then slow down to heal. But you needed to heal from that. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have known that you had a problem.
Exactly. It was like it seriously I went from like feeling totally fine to oh my gosh, I'm at a pain level of like 7 and 8 to like that. It was just so fast. And that was the crazy thing is when I went in and I was talking to the dentist about it and he was like, "How have you not known that this was an issue?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea. This is literally what happened. My last like 12 hours, well, the longer than 12 hours was like this." And as I was explaining that to him, he's like, "You're pretty lucky that we caught it when we did, because if this had gone any longer," I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So, it was amazing, and I'm very thankful that I like heeded the call to like go get it checked out, instead of just trying to tough it out, because that's what I would have totally done otherwise.
Yeah, we're famous, aren't we, for trying to tough things out?
Yep. Yep. So anyway, all that to say, like, yes, I thank you for reminding me of that because you know, sometimes when you're in the midst of it, you don't always like fully see the whole thing, and especially with the infection, like that could have been really, really, really bad. Um,
And
you
isn't it
know,
wonderful that God does see the whole thing? We
yeah,
we we see this. We see through the mirror dimly. You were just talking about
yes,
First Corinthians 13. We see through the mirror dimly,
really.
but God sees everything clear as a bell.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I come back to that all the time. And I think that's like part of the beauty of like me having choosing to, because it was a part of one, but like, you know, of going through and learning that passage. I come back to it frequently. It's like
Yes,
it's like a chime in my head,
and
of
that's what it's supposed to be. It's
exactly.
exactly what it's supposed to be. It's why we memorize, is because then it becomes something that you can meditate on, you can chew on. That verse in Joshua that says, this word shall not depart your mouth, and
No,
you shall meditate on it day and night. You can't meditate on something you haven't memorized because it's not in
agreed.
you,
Yeah.
right? So once you memorize it, then you get to chew it and find out, all the different meanings and how it applies to different things, and that's where the beauty of it is.
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed. I think it's like, again, we're gonna go back to skill set. Like it's definitely a skill set to actually be able to recall all of that and to be
That's right.
working on doing the memorization process. So yeah, if anybody gets anything out of this episode, go memorize passage.
Exactly, exactly.
You never know when you're gonna need it. But like I said, like I literally will chime in my head, and I mean it's helpful too because using that imagery um, of a chime, because I think of a clanging cymbal, and
Yes,
so which is also part of that passage. And so that was one of the ways that I was trying to memorize it. That's what I would do, is I would like word associate.
that's a great way to do it.
you
That's very
know
helpful to
yeah. And
spur your memory. Mhm.
yeah, and I think that's why I feel like it chimes like right when it comes into my brain, and that's the imagery. And so I know that's not actually like a sound, but that is like what
Yeah,
my
have
brain
you
is.
heard it right?
Right, yeah, but it's like is that's where my brain has made that connection. And so it's just kind of like this beautiful little like wind chime. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm seeing very much in part right now, and then one day I will see in full, and that's okay to have, it does bring a lot of peace too within those moments of like, I want to have control.
Yes.
I want to know what's going
I
on.
want to know right now, Lord, if you have somebody for me and when he's coming and how will I know him?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
instead, if you can just say, I can't see past right here, and that's okay.
Right. Well, and like too, it's not always just a singleness thing. Like, I mean, yes, that's a huge part of it, but it is like the within my ministry and my business, like too,
Absolutely. It's all things, isn't it? It's all
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I want to know what's just behind door number two. you know?
You and everyone else. I mean, this is not a unique perspective.
No, no, it's not. But, I think it too, like, I think a lot of us don't always voice that, you
True.
know, you know,
True.
we don't always put it out there like that, hey, we we're struggling in this moment in this area for whatever the reason may be. We like to, especially in the social media age, we like to make everything look like it's perfect when in reality and internally we have a lot of conflict. Um which ironically ties back into what we talked about at church yesterday. We talked about it was actually the passage um with the spiritual gifts and like the so how in a couple of verses before you're getting all of the like for or the listing of like the acts of the flesh, and then you have the gifts of the spirit, right? And so our one of our pastors was talking about how you're constantly having this tug of war with the flesh versus the spirit, and you can't be both. You have to choose one or the other. And I was just like, wow, this is really relevant for me right now. Not that I'm like struggling, I mean, I am with the like idea of control and like knowing what's coming, but it was funny because he even said like your issue might not be listed right here in the Bible, but you still might be struggling with your flesh in another way. So he's like, think about what that is, and then think about how you can turn that into, or what spiritual gift like you can like tap into, so that that's not becoming an issue. And I was like, oh, that's really good. Like, because my need to feel like I have things that are in control, and or to be in control of those things. And so I kept thinking, I was like, okay, well, peace, joy, and then self-control. Like, how do I work with self-control when I want to control the things? Like, is it my self-control to like let it go? So it was
Right.
pretty
Right.
mind-boggling for me, because I was like, I've never thought of.
Self-control to not have control, right?
Yeah. And that was the crazy thing, is I never thought about it that way. Like, self-control to me, like when I read that, I think about it from the perspective of like, don't act on your sin, like, and or your
Discipline.
temptation. Yeah, right. Your discipline actions. And I never thought about it from the perspective of having self-control enough to let it go. And I was like, dang. I was like, that's
Good
no.
job.
I was like, that was an epiphany moment if I've ever seen one. So yeah, anyway, it was pretty wild to kind of look at those two massive lists. I mean, they're not that long, but the and this comparison, right? Because people will always reference the spiritual gifts. People don't reference the bad fruit, as much, like, which obviously we all know is there, but like a lot of pastors will just kind of skim over that and then go, this is all the other stuff. And so it was really amazing to kind of have a conversation, well, to be sitting there and him to preach about the two different lists in comparison, and to know what to look for, not only in our own lives, but like in our brothers and sisters' lives. And like, how do we measure the fruit, whether it's good or bad. And but yeah, anyway. It was a good sermon. It definitely
Sounds like
was.
it.
And so Yeah, I guess my last like question would be like what is something that you would want to impart to younger singles, either men or women? And yeah, just throw some wisdom at us.
Sure, sure. Well, I was about throwing some wisdom out there, but one of the things I say at the end of my web series, my every segment on my web series, is that it's never too late
Mm,
to go somewhere new and try something different.
yeah.
And I think sometimes we get, because of all the pressures, again, those outside noises, is you're too old, you're too this, you're not good enough, all these different things that, we never stop being infused with energy from God to do his work,
Mm,
whatever that calling is, right? So
mm,
it isn't ever too late to go out and do something new or to, live your dream. Go where God sends you. It's never too late, and we should be seeking out those opportunities because God uses those things, and he uses us at different phases in our life for different things.
yeah.
So, I some of the gifts that I am using now that are maybe some of my most powerful gifts, I didn't have 20 years ago.
Hmm.
So, it's a constant evolution of God changing you, molding you, moving you, and that's an exciting thing. So, as soon as you start saying, it's not for me, it's too late, it's things are wrong, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, I don't have this, I don't have that, nothing is out of the realm of what God can do. Why do we put limits on ourselves? But why are we putting limits on God? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
he's limitless.
He is. I mean, I've often said stop putting God in a box. So, and like that's
For sure.
preaching at myself just as much as anybody else. So yeah, thank you for joining me with this conversation. It was great to see you again and to chat, and I loved your perspectives.
Mine,
um
so I apologize that I coughed in people's ears.
but thank you again, and yeah, I will love to keep in touch, and I will get this out to you as well when it releases. And yeah, thank you again for joining me. Okay, Epiphany Tribe. Until next time, see you later.